St. Peter's Square holds its breath. A sea of eyes stares at a single window, and then a name echoes through the world. A name that breaks centuries of tradition, expectations, and predictions. An American has just become Pope. He calls himself Leo XIV. In that moment, something shifts in the air. A chill runs down the spine of prophecy scholars. A silent whisper spreads among the faithful. A question forms in the minds of those who have read the forgotten writings of Saint Malachy. Is it him? Could this be the fulfillment of that ancient prophecy, the one that speaks of Peter the Roman, the final pope, and the end of an era? Today, you're not going to hear the official version, not the Vatican speeches, not what the newspapers want you to read. You're about to hear the story behind the titles, the applause, and the protocol. The story of a prophecy, a millennia-old throne, and a name that may have come to close them both. For centuries, the prophecy of Saint Malachy was seen as little more than an oddity, a curiosity, a footnote for eccentrics and fringe theorists. A list of 112 mottos, each assigned to a future pope, written by an Irish archbishop in the 12th century and made public only in 1595. Each motto, a mystery, a clue, a symbol. And the strange part? Most of them made sense. From the half of the moon for John Paul I, who reigned for only 33 days between two half moons. From the labor of the sun for John Paul II, who was born and died during solar eclipses. And the final motto, Patrus Romanus, Peter the Roman. It reads, "In the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, Peter the Roman shall reign, feeding the flock through many tribulations. After this, the city of 7 hills shall be destroyed, and the dreadful judge shall judge the people." The end. It's a text that stirs fear, curiosity, and countless interpretations, but no modern pope has ever taken the name Peter. John Paul I, John Paul II, Benedict XVI, Francis, and now Leo XIV, born in the United States. A man with a calm expression and careful words. But behind that calmness, a detail sends shockwaves through the prophetic world. He chose the name Leo, a name that hasn't been used since 1903. The last pope with that name, Leo XIII, is remembered for a vision of the enemy asking for a century to destroy the church. A pope who sounded warnings, wrote prayers, fought a spiritual battle with words and symbols. And now, Leo XIV appears, not from Europe, not from the old world, but from the West, from America, the new global empire, the modern Rome. Leo XIV was born in Chicago, in a nation of contrasts, expansive faith and cultural decline, technological power and moral confusion. Now the church is led by a man who carries the symbol of the lion and comes from the very center of today's world. His birth name, Robert Francis Prevost, a serene man with a strong missionary background. But this isn't just a biography. This is about what his name, his timing, and his origin might mean. Because for those who understand symbolism, nothing in this election seems random. Robert served as a missionary in Peru. He lived among the poor. He studied theology and psychology. He focused on shepherding, not administration. Later, he became the prefect for the dicastery for bishops. That means he was the one shaping the future of church leadership around the world, not a public figure, not a headline maker, but the man behind the scenes. Now, that man steps into the spotlight, wearing white and calling himself Leo. For prophecy watchers, this isn't just significant, it's seismic, because if the prophecy is right, this may be the final shepherd. The last one to guide the church before the storm. But let's be clear, Leo XIV is not named Peter. He's not Roman by birth. So what gives? Some say the prophecy is symbolic, that Peter the Roman isn't a literal name, but a spiritual reflection, that the last pope would mirror the first, Peter, the fisherman who denied Christ, then died in Rome as the first bishop, a humble man, a broken man, a leader shaped by pain. And now, Leo XIV, quiet, reserved, missionary, teacher, not a revolutionary, but a guardian, someone who, according to the prophecy, would feed the flock amid many tribulations. Not a reformer, but a protector. And the tribulations, they're already here. Scandals, divisions, loss of trust, global hostility toward tradition and truth. We're living in a time where being faithful is labeled as hate, where beliefs are mocked, where values are replaced by trends. And into this chaos steps Leo XIV, a lion. But which lion? The Lion of Judah, or the roaring lion that seeks to devour? Because in Scripture, the lion is a double-edged symbol. It represents both Christ and the adversary. Which one is Leo XIV? What will his reign bring? Stability, collapse, judgment, or fulfillment? Because if he is Peter the Roman, even in symbol, then the prophecy ends with him. And what comes after is not peace, but reckoning. So now you decide, is this just another name in a long list of pontiffs? Or is Leo XIV the last name, the final chapter, before everything changes? Many people saw the election of Leo XIV as just another historical event, a new name, a new face, a new chapter in a centuries-old institution. But if you look closely, really closely, there's something about this name, this moment, and this man that doesn't fit the usual pattern. It's almost as if the gears of history shifted direction, and something ancient moved beneath the surface. Let's go back for a moment. The last pope to take the name Leo was Leo XIV. He died in 1903. Over 120 years have passed since then. No one touched that name. But Leo XIV left a chilling legacy. He's remembered for having a vision, one that still haunts the church. According to witnesses, Leo XIII saw a dark presence asking God for 100 years of power over the world. And God, in the vision, allowed it. Shaken by what he saw, Leo XIII immediately composed the prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel, a prayer of spiritual warfare, a prayer of protection against evil, a warning hidden in plain sight. Now, more than a century later, that name has returned. And it didn't come back by accident, because Leo XIV didn't choose a trendy name. He chose a loaded one. He chose a name tied to judgment, to visions, to the defense of the faith in a time of darkness. And he chose it now, when the church faces confusion, division, and crisis. Coincidence or a signal? Let's look at Leo XIV's background again. Robert Francis Prevost wasn't a celebrity cardinal. He wasn't known for viral speeches or controversial opinions. He was invisible, a man of quiet influence, a missionary in Latin America, a teacher, a spiritual guide. Then he became the prefect of the dicastery for bishops. That's not a decorative title. It means he was the one choosing future bishops around the world. In other words, he was shaping the next generation of church leadership, quietly, strategically, deeply. And now this man, unknown to many, is the face of the Catholic Church. But maybe that's the whole point, because the prophecy doesn't say the last pope would be a global star. It says he would feed the flock through many tribulations. That's not a glamorous task. That's not the job of a performer. It's the mission of a shepherd in times of war. And war doesn't always look like bombs. Sometimes war looks like silence, like people walking away from faith, like sacred truths being diluted, like spiritual erosion dressed up as progress. So here's a question. What if Leo XIV wasn't chosen just because of his diplomacy or spirituality? What if he was chosen because the time had come for the church to have its last guardian? A final protector before the collapse? There's something else. Many faithful noticed that Leo XIV was born in the United States, a country often seen as the heart of modern secularism, media influence, and cultural revolution. But what if that, too, was part of the sign? Think about it. In the ancient world, Rome was the center of power. But today, where do the ideas come from? Where are the cultural empires built? Where is the new Rome? Many would say the West, more specifically America. Movies, ideologies, trends, technologies, all born there, exported globally, shaping minds and hearts. And now, the Pope comes from there too, from the very center of this new empire. The prophecy says, Peter the Roman. What if that doesn't mean Peter from Rome in a literal sense? What if it means the Pope who represents the spirit of modern Rome, the final global empire? What if the prophecy was never about geography, but about timing and symbolism? Because names matter. Leo, the lion. In the Bible, the lion is not always a hero. Sometimes it represents power and judgment. Other times, it represents the enemy seeking someone to devour. So what kind of lion is Leo XIV? A protector or a precursor to something darker? That's the mystery. And while some people dismiss it all as coincidence, others see patterns, too many to ignore. Let's go back to the list. 112 mottos, 112 popes. The last motto, Peter the Roman. And now, a man is elected pope, carrying a name tied to prophecy, judgment, and war from the heart of the modern world, in a time of moral collapse. How many coincidences do we need before we start asking serious questions? Because here's the truth, the prophecy might not be about a person, but about a moment, a turning point in time. And if that's the case, we're not waiting for the last pope. We're already living under him. But if Leo XIV is the one spoken of by Malachi, if he is in spirit the Peter of the final hour, then what comes next? What happens when the shepherd faces the storm and the church enters its darkest chapter? Are we prepared for that? Or are we still waiting for a sign that may already be here? For centuries, the prophecy of Saint Malachy was dismissed as legend. Even among believers, it remained a curiosity, a list in the margins of church history. But now, it's everywhere. Not because the church endorsed it, not because scholars validated it, but because something has changed. It's not the text that changed, it's the world. We are seeing things we never imagined. Moral confusion, spiritual apathy, religious leaders making global headlines, not for preaching truth, but for blurring it. And now, with the rise of Leo XIV, the question resurfaces, not as a theory, but as a feeling. What if the prophecy was never wrong? What if we misunderstood it? Let's look again at its final words. In the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, Peter the Roman will reign, feeding the flock through many tribulations. After this, the city of 7 hills shall be destroyed, and the dreadful judge shall judge the people. The end. That's not poetry. That's not metaphor. It's a sequence, a timeline. First, persecution, then a shepherd, then destruction, then judgment, and finally, silence. No more popes, no more church as we know it, no more history to write. The list ends. And that's what makes this moment so disturbing, because many believe we are now in the middle of it. Think about it. The persecution is not just physical anymore. It's ideological. It's not a sword against the church. It's a silence swallowing it from within. How many churches are empty? How many believers are ashamed of their faith? How many doctrines have been redefined to fit the culture? The tribulation isn't coming, it's here. And Leo XIV, he's not starting a revolution, he's not launching a reform, he's sitting quietly, just like the prophecy said. He will feed the flock through many tribulations. That's what shepherds do. They don't rebuild the fence. They keep the sheep alive when the wolves are already among them. But that's not the only warning. The prophecy ends with a line that chills the soul. Then the city of 7 hills shall be destroyed. Rome, the eternal city. But what kind of destruction? Literal fire and ash, or something deeper? A spiritual collapse? A loss of faith so massive that the city no longer carries the light it once did? Because here's the thing. Destruction doesn't always begin with explosions. Sometimes it begins with indifference. And maybe it already has. Let's go even deeper. Many believe Peter the Roman isn't a man, but a symbol. A final echo of the first Peter, the one who walked with Christ, who denied him, who was redeemed, and who died in Rome, sealing the foundation of the church with his blood. What if the prophecy is a full circle story, from Peter to Peter, from the first shepherd to the last? And what if Leo XIV, even unknowingly, is the mirror of that first man, a humble soul, unnoticed, marked by sacrifice? What if he's not here to change the church, but to guard it one last time, before everything falls? Because prophecy is not about predicting, it's about preparing. And that's the most terrifying thought, because if we are under the last pope, then the next event in the prophecy is not another conclave. It's the fall of the city, and after that, the judge. But ask yourself this: if the judge is coming, what does that mean for those who have already stopped listening? What happens when grace is still available, but no one asks for it? What happens when the church is still standing, but its voice is drowned out by the noise of the world? Are we waiting for a sign, or have we already missed it? In the end, maybe it's not about names, not about titles, or robes, or ceremonies. Maybe it's about silence, the silence before a storm, the silence of a church standing on the edge, a quiet tension waiting to break. Leo XIV sits on the throne of Peter, but no one knows for how long. No prophecy says how many years he will reign. No vision describes what day things will change. But the list ended with him. And that's enough to leave the world uneasy. Because if the list was right about 111 popes, why would it be wrong about the 112th? It never said, and then there's another. It never said, unless circumstances change. It simply ends, abruptly, decisively. And that's what makes this so terrifying, because we're used to options, to postponements, to loopholes. But this feels final. And maybe that's why the world is pretending not to notice, because admitting it, even for a moment, means everything has to change. Your priorities, your lifestyle, your faith. And let's be honest, we like stories about the end, as long as they stay fictional. But what if this one isn't? What if the final pope is already reigning? What if the church is already under siege, not with swords but with distractions? What if the line between shepherd and wolf is already blurred? And what if the judge is closer than we think? This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. It's about lifting your eyes from the screen, from the chaos, from the noise, and asking, am I ready? Not for conspiracy theories, not for panic, but for truth. Because when history closes its final chapter, what will matter isn't what you predicted, but what you believed. And if something in you knows this moment is not normal, if something in you feels this strange pull to go deeper, then maybe it's time to wake up, to look around, to search, to watch, and above all, to stay standing. Because the world may not believe in prophecy, but prophecy doesn't need permission to come true. If this message reached you, if something stirred inside you today, stay with us. There's more to uncover, more voices to hear, more truth to explore, and we'll do it together. Subscribe and keep watching, because this story is far from over.